order.
Mrs. De Silva,
Here.
Mrs. Messig,
Here.
Mrs. Rigby,
Here.
Mr. Valentine,
Here.
and Mrs. Gillis.
Here. And tonight we have, approval of the minutes. Just kidding. Is there a motion? Oh, pledge. I thought I said pledge in order, and then I messed it up anyway. We have Wright Elementary Rocks girls here tonight to lead us in our pledge.
I'd like to introduce the principal of Wright Elementary School, Mr. Lucas Bauer.
All right, thank you, Dr. Marchhausen, President Gillis, members of the board, Mr. Kern, for inviting us into lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. We intentionally selected these wonderful young women as we celebrate Women's History Month here in March. We thought it'd be fitting that we also honor and celebrate these amazing young ladies that are part of our ROCKS program at Daniel Wright Elementary School, running 10 years strong. Thank you to our board. Thank you to our school district for honoring and recognizing this program that we find great value in. For those maybe unfamiliar with the ROCKS program, it does stand for Ruling Our Experiences and provides resources, programs, lessons, activities, all geared at helping our girls use their voice, rule their experiences, and embrace their confidence, and they're going to be confident here tonight. I do want to recognize Morgan Lashinsky. She's our school social worker. Joanna Bentz, an intervention specialist. Angela Panzero is our school psych, and then Whitney Shelton, our school counselor, cannot be here, but they help lead this wonderful group that meets weekly. So before Sophia starts to lead us, they are going to be confident with their voices and introduce themselves to the Board of Education.
Hi, my name is Sophia Neri. Hi, my name is Bahar Neri. Hi, my name is Detrija Baruba. Hi, my name is Savannah Andrews. Hi, my name is Keisha Simmons. Hi, my name is Ella Lake. Hello, my name is Kimberly Sestak. Hi, my name is Mary Malika. Hi, my name is Alexa Tata. Hi, my name is Jubal Sawan.
Checklist, so if you would join me, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So like they hit the fast forward button. I was like,
Three times speed, I know.
Approval of regular minutes. February 12th, 2024, regular meeting minutes. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Valentine, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. De Silva. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mrs. Messig,
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby,
Yes.
and Mrs. Gillis.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Approval of regular work session minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Rigby. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Messick. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Rigby,
Yes.
Mrs. Messick,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
and Mrs. Gillis.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Approval of agenda as presented tonight. Is there a motion? Moved by Mr. Valentine, second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Rigby. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mrs. Messick,
Yes.
and Mrs. Gillis.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Moving on to awards and recognitions.
At this time, I would like to introduce our Executive Director of Human Resources, Mr. Brian Boney, as he will lead the presentation of our Golden Shamrock Award winners.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, board. Typically, we'd have Ed Pugnacki up here, and he is not here tonight, but Jen Schwanke is going to help me out. For the Shamrock, Ed founded the Golden Shamrock Award in 1990 to recognize those staff members who've made outstanding contributions to our district and who've had an impact on those around them. And so I'm actually going to start tonight. So we have an award winner from our HR department. And at this time, I'm going to ask Vicki Lighting to come up here and join me. So as she makes her way up, it's such an honor to recognize Vicki Lighting tonight. I had an opportunity to read through the dozens of comments that staff in our district have made about Vicki in words like gracious, patient, kind, helpful, responsive, supporting, calming, and thoughtful were said time and again. In her 13 years working in human resources in Dublin, she has been the first person to say congratulations on being hired in Dublin City Schools to hundreds of new teachers and administrators. She's also helped countless staff members negotiate difficult medical issues or absences. She always makes it a priority to give of her time and energy and to make sure each person that she is working with feel their issue or question is the most important at that moment. Some of the best comments from people that nominated Vicki are statements like, quote, Vicki is the absolute boss of Dublin City Schools. She has an innate ability to make you feel heard and special. She answers every question with patience and calm amidst the storms of people's lives. She puts up with the most bizarre and obvious questions anyone has ever had to field. Quote, Vicki is such an important piece of the puzzle of success here in Dublin, and I hope that she knows her impact reaches far and wide. And then this one, could the district function without Vicki? Question mark. Maybe, but it wouldn't be as smooth and joyful. There are so many more entries, but these give you a general idea of her impact. I am certain that Vicki would be content to remain in the shadows and to keep doing her work day after day. I know that being up here and being recognized is something that she would be just fine without, but when somebody is the embodiment of our values, we should celebrate them. We are better together because of the work she does every day. Vicki always takes responsibility, and she demonstrates what it means to grow as a team member, as an employee of Dublin City Schools. Vicki and I have a long-standing joke. At some point, I asked her if she missed me when I came back from vacation or being away, and she said, words cannot express. This has become a sort of catchphrase for us from time to time. Well, Vicki, words cannot adequately express how much you mean to me, the HR department, and Dublin City Schools, but I hope you know what a footprint and difference you have made here and continue to make. You are so deserving of this recognition, and it is an honor to recognize you.
Well, I am very honored, very grateful and very humbled by this award, and I thank you all so much. One of the things, though, I do get to do in human resources, and when I do meet with our new hires, is to say to them, you will love working for Dublin. It is a great district. So, thank you.
And at this time, I'd like to introduce Troy Ersham, principal at Abraham Depp Elementary, who's going to say a few words about our second award winner, Megan Sparks. Mr. Ersham.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening, Board of Education, Mr. Kern, Dr. Marshausen. Thanks for this opportunity. I'm very honored to welcome and introduce Megan Sparks, who is our gifted intervention specialist at Depp Elementary. As Brian said about Vicki, Megan is one that would also just kind of like to work and be with kids and hide in the shadows. But based on all of the nominations and accolades and positive comments from our staff, I wanted to share a few to kind of showcase what she does each and every day at Depp. Megan has served as our gifted intervention specialist for the past 4 years. Her knowledge, skill, and expertise around extension and stretch for student learning is simply amazing. She is able to create high-quality lessons and tasks that fully engage those students with a passion around curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking. Megan is more than your typical practitioner. She's a gentle and kind person who looks out for others more than herself. She embraces positivity around everyone she comes in contact with and provides a keen sense of humor with her peers. Another teacher writes, she also provides staff with enrichment opportunities and takes small groups who are ready for a challenge. This year, she has offered time slots to either come into the room to co-teach a lesson, share a lesson to your class, or work in small groups. Megan is the definition of a trailblazer, that's our nickname. Over the past 4 years, she has worked diligently to create a comprehensive system of support for extending students' learning. She embraces our students' talents as well as supports them in their emotional well-being and overall development as a well-rounded individual. Megan is a joy to work with each day and embodies the qualities of a Golden Shamrock Award winner. Megan's here tonight with her husband, Matt, and her 2 sons, Aiden and Keaton. I'd like to have Megan say a few words.
I'd like to thank Troy for those kind words, and I'm just so fortunate to be working in such a wonderful district that supports kids. And yes, I remember probably meeting Mrs. Lighting, and yes, I do love working in Dublin. Thank you, Board of Education, for your support and your leadership of kids, and I'm just so fortunate to work in a space where the well-being of kids is at the forefront, and we are supported as staff to help make sure that we can meet those needs and help develop those kids into wonderful thinkers for the future. So I'm really blessed to be working in such a wonderful space. Thank you.
Sorry. I'll tell you if it's not good luck.
At this time, I would like to invite Dublin Kaufman High School Principal Matt Perrell to come help us celebrate some of our swimmers.
Thank you, Dr. Marshausen, Mr. Kern, board members. Thank you for your continued support of interscholastic athletics, where our students have an opportunity to learn important life lessons and showcase their elite talent. And I can't think of a better example than that than our coach of Kaufman Swimming, Coach Mark Burnbrick, and swimmer Emily Brown. So it's my honor to present them to you this evening. Coach.
Feel sorry for the next person that's got to come up here. Good evening, and thank you, board, for allowing us to be here and certainly recognize the efforts of Emily Brown. I know I've been here 2 other times. I've been the coach now at Kaufman for my 3rd year. Last year I was here, and we talked about how Emily has won state champion her freshman year in the 2 and the 5 free, her sophomore year the 2, the 5 free, her junior year the 2 and the 5 free. 6-time state champion, and then we had a little talk this year before the season started saying, well, do you want to be a 4-time champion in 2 and the 5, or do you want to challenge yourself? And certainly Emily Brown did what I would have expected, which is I want to challenge. We embarked this year and went into 2 different events for her, and lo and behold, guess what? State champion in both events, but this time also double state record. Broke both state records in those events, and certainly showed everyone what she is and who she is, and just showing that her competitiveness and what she could do by just challenging herself and looking for something different in what she was going to do. And we have our team banquet tomorrow, tomorrow. And no, it's Wednesday, yeah. I guess someone better show up for that. You know, it was funny, I was going over some things, and just to let you kind of get a little summation of Emily's career at Kaufman. I've asked the AD, but I do believe she's almost in a single event. I get there's a lot of team events and all that. 4-time state champion, a double state champion 4 years in a row. She'll end her career with, there's 8 individual races you can do in high school swimming, 8 individuals and 3 relays. In those 8 individuals, she owns 3 state records. At Kaufman, she owns 7 of the 8 records at Kaufman. So her name will be etched in stone for a long, long time in the state as well as in Kaufman for what she has accomplished in her things. One thing that, you know, everyone's, I know when I visited Matt and this, and people ask, well, what's next, you know, and, you know, I felt I've known her since, 11, 12, and coached her. I said, you know, my job is to get her somewhere. And, you know, just so everyone's aware, her next sort of hurrah for her and I is going to be Olympic trials here in June, where she'll be trying out for the USA team. And then she's off to college, attending the University of Tennessee, where we'll see and expect great things from her coming into the future. So thank you. I did ask Matt jokingly, but I told my wife I had to do this. If there's one thing I can leave, and since it's such a great swimmer and all these great things, if we could look at getting a pool one day in our district, that would be, I'm also the club coach, so I coach all 3 high schools then, and it'd be just darn nice when I have to go all over the place and swim in these other pools, but no, but I had to do that. So thank you very much.
Congratulations. Good luck. At this time, I would like to invite Dublin Jerome Principal, Mr. Mike Aron, to the podium.
Good evening, Dr. Marshausen, members of the board. It brings me a lot of pleasure to share the great accomplishments of Olivia and Millie here tonight. I did want to very quickly say, guys, that Mr. Schwanke could not be here tonight. He's actually at the OCC dinner and Hall of Fame, so we wanted to make sure I wish you congratulations. Really quickly, Emily, I want to wish you congratulations. I got to be at the state swim meet when she swam both those races and broke the state record. It was awesome to see that, as well as Millie and Olivia's event. I also want to take a second for our parents and families who support. I watch Millie leave school every day with her backpack, get into her car so she can get to practice. I see. So every day she runs out, gets to practice, and works really hard. Our swimmers put an immense amount of time in on a day-to-day basis. It requires a sacrifice and a commitment I don't think a lot of people understand in terms of the time that they take, and I know Millie and Olivia both have done that. I'm really, really super proud of you because I see that hard work, and it's great to see something pay off. And I want to also make sure I express gratitude to Morgan and Jordan for your unwavering support of the program. You guys work really well together and give our kids a chance to be successful. So I'm excited to introduce Coach Quesnell so she can share the success of the girls.
Good evening. I am Coach Morgan. I'm one of our 2 head coaches for Jerome Swimming. I don't know if anyone was here last year, but Jordan and I kind of have a unique situation where we split head coach duties. Both of us do other things, so we do what we can to make this work because we love it. I'm always honored to stand up here and talk about Jerome Swimming. I am a Jerome alumni. I went to school and swam from 2010 to 2014. And I could speak for days and days and days about how far this program has come. When I was a freshman, there were 2 of us going to states. Now we've got whole teams going. We've got people winning individual events. Our girls won as a team last year. So the talent and the work that this team has put into itself and the progress they made and the things they've achieved, it's been really cool to see that come full circle and to have been a part of it on both ends. So Millie and Olivia are 2 phenomenal athletes. I could stand up here and talk about both of them until the cows come home, but I know you guys have other things to do. Olivia this year swam the 50 and the 100 free. I don't know if anyone knows much about swimming here, but those are very quick races. She was second in both of them, which in the 50 free, it's whoever has the longest fingernails. In the 100 last year, Olivia was 10th. So she went from 10th to 2nd in a year, which is huge. And then Millie swam the 2 and the 500 free, and she won both of those. And Millie is actually our first girls individual state champion for Jerome. So round of applause for Millie. These ladies are both juniors. They were both huge players on our girls state team that won last year. Millie is still uncommitted, and Olivia is committed to swim at Auburn. Like I said, I could say so many things about these girls. They are both so naturally talented. They work incredibly hard. We actually have to monitor them to make sure they're not going too fast at practice rather than going too slow. And, you know, the future's theirs. Whatever they decide to put their mind to in this sport, they'll go there. So congrats, ladies.
All right, next up we have Mr. Melody with us to do our tolls update, and I think he has brought special guests with him.
Yes, good evening, members of the board, Dr. Marshausen, Mr. Kern.
Before I turn it over to our guest speakers, I have just a brief update from Tolles. The monthly update should be attached to board docs, so if you have any questions on that, feel free to ask. But just one update to the update. Tolles did have a board meeting on Saturday morning. Again, we're kind of getting into a trend here, but one of the big topics coming out of that board meeting was the board did approve and authorize Tolles to take out a $30 million loan to expand the facility. They're going to earmark right now high bay labs for welding and construction and a new welcome center with additional classrooms. So this funding will come from a 0.1 mil dedicated revenue stream from Tolles, since we are under the 2 mil limit. We're going to dedicate 1 mil to that, so it's going to be a loan versus a bond, which we're traditionally welcome to here. So if there aren't any questions, I'm sure there'll be more in the next board update, since that just happened on Saturday. It was after the monthly update came out. So if we don't have any questions about the board update, I will turn it over to Cindy Alderman. She is with Tolles and is responsible for marketing and recruitment, and then she will introduce our guest speakers this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Melody. Good evening, Board President Gillis, Dr. Marshausen, Mr. Kern, board members. Thank you for having us this evening. We express our gratitude for the privilege of joining you at the board meeting this evening. The collaborative relationship between Tolles and Dublin District holds immense significance for us at Tolles, and we truly appreciate it. Over the recent years, both Dublin and Tolles have witnessed significant growth, bringing forth numerous opportunities. The students of Dublin schools in particular benefit from a wealth of opportunities during their high school educational journey, and we at Tolles are honored to be a part of the diverse array of options available to them. At Tolles for the 2024-2025 school year, we've accepted over 700 students this year. That's a significant growth for us, as you can imagine. In the past, our enrollment was around 650 students between our level 1 and level 2 students. I'm sure that you are aware that due to this growth, there are limited opportunities for our first-year students to attend Tolles full day. Our academic seats will be reserved for students, like the students I have with me tonight, who join us at Tolles for their first year and come just for their career tech program, and then return back to Dublin schools for their academics. During their second year, if they're interested in their internship opportunities or cohort program, which these students are, then they enroll in Tolles for their senior year for an all-day program. With me this evening are 3 incredible ladies from Dublin schools that are seniors in our pre-nursing program. These students have chosen to be a part of our cohort program at Tolles. Akshaya Hariharan and Olivia Franklin are working at Dublin Methodist Hospital, and Sue Rodriguez is employed by Doctors West. What they're here tonight to do is to share a little bit about their journey that led them to Tolles in our pre-nursing program, as well as some experiences and their future plans. Excuse me. First, I'd like to introduce Akshaya.
Hello, good evening. So first, I want to start off by saying thank you for having me here and why I chose Tolles. I'll be very honest, when they took us to Tolles in our sophomore year, I was really impressed that we get to wear scrubs every day, and that's one of the main reasons why I chose Tolles. But little did I know that I learned the value behind those scrubs, and that's what Tolles taught me. And it helped me decide my career, which I was debating on forever, and I was never sure about what I wanted to do, and Tolles helped me decide what I wanted to do. So I finished my STNA school, which was in our second semester of our junior year, and we got certified for it. And the senior year, we got to do an internship, and it's like a full-time job, and you get credit for it. And I work at Dublin Methodist along with Olivia Franklin, and it has been such a great experience because I've never been in a hospital before, like as a healthcare worker. And it's just something different to see, and you won't appreciate the value unless you're actually working there. So, you know, I wanted to wear scrubs for fun, but now I know the true value behind wearing scrubs, and I love working in Dublin Methodist. And I would like to thank my instructors and just you guys for making it all happen, and then also just the transportations, because I was a half-day student, and my dad was not comfortable with me driving, so I took the bus. So if it wasn't for them, I would have not done it. So thank you guys so much for having me.
Oh my goodness. Hello.
My name is Sue Rodriguez. I work over at Doctors West Hospital. I actually knew about tolls before I started going to Dublin schools. I went to Worthington for elementary, and as soon as my mom said we were moving, I was Googling all over Dublin City Schools website, finding out like what I can do. I was a big archery person in elementary school, so I was looking up all the team opportunities that I had. There were none, but I found out about tolls on the high school's website, and I was like, Mom, I have to go here. And she was a little against because it was in the middle of nowhere, kind of. And I was like, it's fine. They have buses. I'm going, and you're going to pay for it. And she was like, okay. I'm really glad that I went, though. It was a really great opportunity. I met a lot of new people. And I feel like I came out of my shell a lot because we had 75 people total in our class. So they split us all up, and we were all jumbled together. So I met people from Hilliard. I met people that go to the other Dublin schools. I go to Scioto. And it's just friendships that I never would have had if I wouldn't have come here. And I was still able to maintain my relationships from Scioto. I was in there in the afternoon, so we all got to see each other and everything. And it was just a really good opportunity, and I'm glad that we had this partnership with Tolls. It really set me forward in my career working at the hospital. I'm getting a lot of experiences, and I'm really ready for college, I believe. So my next steps, I plan to go to Columbus State. Ohio Health personally gives us a tuition reimbursement, so college is paid for, hopefully. And then after Columbus State, I plan to go to Ohio State. And I hope that everyone, you guys, also continue with their careers. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Olivia Franklin. My journey actually started, my mom is actually the one who got me into it. I was a little hesitant just because I also played softball for Kaufman, and I was so worried I was going to miss out on all the opportunities that Kaufman has to offer, such as clubs, sports, missing like fun things with my friends and having that experience. But with that half-day program I was able to do my junior year, I was able to go back to Kaufman in the afternoon and still have like all the Kaufman experience. I was actually, my senior year, I was very hesitant to come back, mainly just because it's your senior year. You've got all the senior stuff going on, graduation, the Kings Island trip, everything that I was so worried to miss. But thankfully, it was possible for me to still be able to participate in all of those things. And I also was introduced to the internship program, the cohort. So I go to school for 2 weeks, and I work for 2 weeks, so it's nice. I also work at Dublin Methodist, so it's just, yeah, it's good. I'm planning on going to OU for nursing, yeah, and finish my journey there. Is there any questions for any of us that I could answer?
I have one on the cohort for all of you, because I think you're all three in the cohort program, and I just wondered, how is it working for 2 weeks and then transitioning back to school? Do you feel like you're all together? Do you feel like you miss a beat in the classroom, or how does that work?
No, so our class periods are, so we have like our 4 common like core classes just to make sure that we can graduate while still going like working. So we actually, so I start my morning, I go to English, and then I have a combined period of English and history. They work together, and then I have a history period. So they make sure that we can fit all of our schoolwork in those 2 weeks and still be well prepared for us to go to college and continue our education. So they definitely made it work really well. They're hoping next year to add some CCP classes to start our gen eds for our going into college.
If I could actually add to that, I personally, I am also part of the 2x2, but I don't go to Scioto for the 2 weeks off. To Tolls. I technically have all my credits to graduate. I didn't graduate earlier because I wanted to be part of this internship program. So instead of going to the classes that are designed for the cohort program, I do online CCP to get my prereqs for nursing out of the way. And so basically I'm working the entire month.
I work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I do my homework on the weekends. And then Akshay does the same thing. So we don't actually go to tolls during the day. We go for special meetings and everything, but other than that, we're pretty much working and doing homework online.
What is it that you guys do, like at Ohio Health and Doctors West during the 2 week? What do they have you doing?
So we work as something called a PSA, Patient Support Assistant, and we basically help aid the nurses, and we also do patient care stuff. So a little glimpse of our days, we start our mornings with like doing vitals, and then we chart, and then we help just assisted kind of living, like taking them to the bathroom and all those kind of things. And we get to do some like EKGs and like bladder scans, and that's like the best part. So we just really help in patient care and stuff.
Okay, wonderful. Anyone else have questions?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say thank you for coming here and sharing your experience with tolls and your experience with the schools and the internship. It was all very enlightening, so thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. This is my first time being at a board meeting, so it's pretty fun.
Thank you, ladies, for coming. It was true pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Melody, for giving us this opportunity to connect with Toll students. Anytime that we can have students come and share their experience, it's a really big treat for us.
Great, thank you. And one last announcement or comment. On April 24th, the Tolls is hosting the School Board Association dinners. It's a two-part, like from 6 to 7, there is a students showcase where you can mingle around and meet many more students just like these that learn more about the programs that are offered at Tolls. And then at 7 o'clock, the culinary students host a dinner for all the school board members and administration that are there. So if you can put it on your calendars, it's a great evening, and you learn a lot about Tolls. So thank you again for the wonderful updates.
Public participation. We don't have anybody. Nope. Okay. All right. Moving on to Board of Education committees. Do we have any updates?
I have an update from Key Communicators and the new direction that this is going to be taking under Cassie Dietrich, who's now overseeing this. And she is focused on making sure that this group becomes proactive, and with that in mind, keeping it small and instead of as many members as there was before, kind of narrowing it down to 15 or less members of the community that can really help with communication areas that need to be dispersed amongst the community at large, such as school finance, enrollment growth, and especially reaching out to non-parents and thinking beyond the lens of the parent. So many of the members that will be on Key Communicators will not necessarily be parents, but members of the community at large, so we can figure out how best to reach everyone in Dublin City Schools.
Thank you, Cassie, for your hard work, for your presentation. I don't think there was one person in that room that isn't excited for the vision that you were able to share in moving forward and an opportunity to re-engage this group. Your hard work did not go unnoticed, and really appreciate your time that evening.
Are we still on committees?
We're still here.
Okay, all right. I just have an update from the BAC. This meeting was at the Ohio Restaurant Association, and John Barker, who is the president and CEO of what's newly called the Ohio Restaurant and Hospitality Alliance. They really just want to refer to it as the Alliance. 10,000 locations in their membership, and what they do is they advance and protect Ohio's restaurant, food service, and hospitality community. So their members can include restaurants, breweries, coffee shops, caterers. And the one thing that's important for us is they have, their program is called ProStart Ohio, and they work with interested high school students in Ohio. I think there are 55, if my notes are correct, currently. in the state of Ohio. And what they do is they train the hospitality workforce in culinary arts and restaurant management program. So naturally, they're a valued partner for Dublin City Schools for our hospitality pathway for students. The other thing that he talked about was they are also an advocacy group, and there's likely going to be an issue on the 2024 ballot about elimination of tipped wage and instead move to an increased minimum wage. So their advocacy efforts would be centered around a server-led campaign, so voters can understand how much servers would be impacted and so that they can have a voice. So really great presentation that he gave and just a valuable partner for us.
All right, great. Student representative update.
Hello. Hello, board. It's nice to see you guys again. For our student representative update, just a few things on our calendar that happened. Daylight savings was last Saturday. Spring break is coming up this Friday, and juniors took the SAT last Tuesday. For updates on dodgeball, which is the other part of my role for the SSAC, prelims are held in all three schools to fund the Glitter Girls Guild. Sorry, that's a tongue twister there. There's a pep rally this Friday in all three schools, and Jerome specifically is hosting a Spirit Week to lead up to their assembly and tournament, and to also kick off spring break. And then for graduation, all three schools are getting ready for the 2024 Kings Island trip and the casino night. Ads are getting available to purchase for seniors to be remembered in the yearbook. And then for Kaufman, there's auditions for valedictorian speeches and musical performances to see off our 2024 class seniors. For Kaufman specifically, in theater, we have a 24-hour show with notable music created by Kaufman Band students that was featured in the show. For Jerome, we have the robotics team have qualified to compete for the first Robotics World Champions. Speech and debate placed 7th out of 86 teams on a state level and received an award for School of Excellence in Debate and Rhetoric. And then Nathan Flanagan is heading to Glasgow, Scotland, to compete in the World's Irish Dance Competition this month. As well as the band and choir received superior rating at last weekend's OMEA contest and are headed for states. For Emerald Campus, we recently had our DTA Rising, which is the competition between everybody who is in the Dublin Teacher Academy around the state. And we got a lot of first place, a lot of second place, and we got a lot of good placings for our school in a series of competitions. I know one of them was a storybook competition, but some of them were improv with speaking. So I thought it was interesting to learn about that. And then finally, for just our representatives, our Instagram account finally got made. So a little celebration for us. I know that you guys are all aware on how Instagram has impacted the board interactions with students, specifically with the snow days. So we're hoping that we can get that kind of circulation with our account and more students can know about our role. And that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the update. Mr. Marshausen.
Thank you, Mrs. Gillis. Oh, it's all right. I don't get hung up on it. A couple of quick updates on things that I know that have the attention of our students and many of our parents. We're in the midst of scheduling right now, merging those student requests with our staff information and using Infinite Campus for the first time to work through our scheduling. Last week, we had our middle schools principals and counselors here, and getting to hear their conversations from low moans to applause at some point as they go through the process was good. And what's really interesting is many of our middle school teams were back again today as they get to use the software and see what the capacity is for the software. At the same time, we began welcoming our high school counselors and administrative teams today as they meet with Mrs. Marple and members of her team and Mr. Gill and a representative from Infinite Campus to help train us on how to do this work. Going back to the book, Who Moved My Cheese? We're moving a lot of people's cheese. But we're doing really good work, and it's something that needs to be done for us. As we prepare for next year, the 25-26 process will be even easier as we get accustomed to using this software in this process. I know we have several of our students who have been concerned about the transition in grade books from Schoology to Infinite Campus and not being able to see grades in real time. To those students, one of the messages is we're never going back. So as we move forward, we want to be able to create a pathway where the expectations are clear. And the expectations of what the process is for Schoology, what the process is for Infinite Campus, and how often the expectations are that teachers do make that sync between the two. This has been year one. We have some teachers who sync frequently. We have some teachers who may sync once a week or once every 10 days. It's okay. And we need to all take a moment to breathe a little bit. It's caused me to reflect a little bit on what's the purpose of school, learning versus getting grades. What is the purpose of a grade? What is the stress that we're creating by having constant reminders of what we're doing? So I think the process is opening us up to have conversations about what's the environment we're creating and how are we supporting our students through the learning journey. And we're just starting, but I think the first message right now is we're not going back. And if students have questions about their grades, we encourage them to talk to their teachers. If parents have questions about the process being used, if your student's not coming home with the information that satisfies you, we encourage parents, email the teacher, find out what the process is. And we're always growing and always getting better. Along those lines, I am incredibly honored to lead this team. We continue to increase the leadership capacity at CO and at the building level. And when we talk about limitless potential for getting better every day, authentic communication, collaboration, listening and engaging, and finding ways to always get better are critical for us as a district. We had principals in on Thursday, and we lived the opportunity to hear from our principals. And our goal is to model so that our teachers are able to freely share and openly share idea with our principals about how do we get this better each and every day. And as we look at this leadership journey, I am grateful, and Chris and I had an opportunity to present at COSPA about this. That Journey 2030 is our North Star. As we talk about what are our goals in preparing students for success, that the leadership that the team is able to provide, thanks to the board's clarity and leadership, allows us on a journey where the results are only going to continue to improve. Speaking of improving, we are grateful that Dr. Lori Misi applied for a grant through the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, and the Dublin City School District was awarded a $1.1 million grant to prioritize the purchase of tech equipment that will allow us to expand our curriculum and services that we provide for our students. And one of the goals in this grant that Dr. Misi has written is for us to be able to purchase some of the equipment for successful programs here at Emerald Campus so that we can replicate those programs in the buildings. So as we look at what do career pathways look like, we have a lot of different opportunities to provide students with those pathways. They can be here at Emerald Campus. They can be with our partners at Tolles, with our partners at Columbus State, and even some of the pathways that we're able to offer in our buildings. So we're grateful for the grant. We will be working to make sure that we meet all of those grant requirements. And when we get a grant, it's a team effort. It's Dr. Misi and Mrs. Marple and their team working with Mr. Kern and Mr. Hodges and the team in our finance department to make sure that we meet all of the specific requirements of the grant. It's not like they just give us 1.1 million and say, go have fun. Everything we do has to be tracked through the state and tracked through the grant writing process and now the expenditure process. So this is something that will allow us to be better, but the work's just beginning. And speaking of career technical education, there are really 3 ways that students can achieve college credit while in high school. We have College Credit Plus is taking of college courses from Columbus State through Ohio State while they're high school students. We have our AP and IB courses where students can take exams where they often can earn credit at the institutions that they go to. And in the state of Ohio, we also have Career Technical Assurance Guides. And these CTAG courses are where students can earn college credit through approved career technical courses that have exams, that have advisory groups, that allow them to enroll in a higher education program. And if the comparable program are there, they get those credits within 3 years. Currently, our CTAG courses are not weighted when you look at grade point averages. Last Tuesday at the governor's executive workforce meeting, I made a proposal to the governor's executive workforce board and to Director Dakin that statewide, the state require all CTAG courses to receive the same weight at any school in the state of Ohio that AP or College Credit Plus courses get. There's a stigma around some of our career tech courses and what it means to get college credit that's articulated in career tech areas and pathways. I think we need to remove that stigma. If we're going to assign college credit, regardless if it's a technical credit or it's AP Calc. If it's college level work, it should be weighted the same. So I made that proposal at the workforce board. Lieutenant Governor Husted supports that, and we're going to continue to work to see if we can get that done at the state level. Just wanted all of you to know that that's something that was proposed by your superintendent at the state workforce board in case there are any questions that follow along with that. Upcoming events, we've got SAC tomorrow. I know that someone's going to be joining me at the Student Advisory Committee tomorrow. On Wednesday, we're fortunate to be hosting Governor DeWine and Lieutenant Governor Husted in a roundtable conversation about the use of cellular phones in school. Mrs. Rigby will be joining me on that panel, as well as representatives from other school districts across the state of Ohio. Thursday evening is the State of the City address down at the Exchange in Bridge Park. And then I know no one's counting, but 4 days until spring break. So we're all kind of holding on as we finish this stretch run. It's a long stretch from holidays until now, and I know nobody blames anyone other than me for the fact that we only had 1 snow day. So as we go through the process, we're ready and eager for spring break. I'm going to turn it over. We've kind of changed things up a little bit, and I'm going to let Mrs. Dietrich take it from here in this part of the report.
Good evening, Board of Education. So I'm going to cover 3 topics tonight. I'm going to start with the fact that communications is as much a science as it is an art. And so I know Mr. Andres likes to throw around acronyms and models and big things, so I decided I was going to try to beat him at that game. And I pulled down some communications models that we commonly use in the industry. So traditionally when students think of communications, they do think of the arts because you're writing, so there's lots of English language arts involved, and then there's design. But there's actually a science side behind what we do. And so understanding how data drives the decision making in communications has been a theme that I've talked about before. But I don't just pull that out of thin air per se. And there's an expertise and experience that comes with that. And so on the left-hand side, you'll see a model that talks about the 4 different ways we communicate and what our objectives are. And so in the blue, you have entertain. In green, you have inspire. In red, you have convince. We also call this persuade. And in yellow, you have educate. So when we think about what we do in public schools, we lean a little bit more to the left on the model. Our goal is to educate people and then also to entertain them in terms of making them feel good and find value in their school district and the work that their students are doing. We spend a little bit less time on the, I guess, on the red area, but that's different than it varies by school district. So, for example, in Huber Heights, I did spend a considerable more time trying to persuade families to stay because we had a large number of students who would open enroll or go to private school. Here in Dublin, because of our enrollment growth and our numbers, I don't spend as much time trying to convince people that Dublin's a great school because they already know and they're coming here. So it's not something it's not a product I'm trying to sell to them. And then as we move to the right, you'll notice that we talk in acronyms as well, STP. And so when we talk about STP in communications, we're talking about segmentation, targeting, and positioning. And so one of the things that I've really worked on here and things that keep me up at night is what the different segments are in Dublin City Schools because it is such a large district. So when we segment our audience, it can vary on how we segment them. So in our case, we might segment them by school. We might segment them by grade level, so elementary, middle, and high. We might segment them by socioeconomic status or special education status. And so the first thing we do is look at who is the target, who's the segment that we're wanting to target with our information. And then we work on targeting the message to them. So one of the things I talked about with key communicators was a message that I send to an elementary school in the Northwest Quadrant about a crisis may look vastly different than a communication I send in the more southern part of our district. It doesn't make one good or one bad. It's just different because the population and the segment that we're targeting are different, no different than high school versus elementary. A communication I send about something happening in an elementary class is going to probably be a little bit more careful and tread a little lightly than high school because high school parents are used to or being exposed to things that happen when kids are older and don't get a little as rattled, I would say. And so then the third thing is positioning, deciding what position we want to take with that audience. And so there's a lot of thought that goes into what we send out. And there's a lot of data that drives our communication. So we are always thinking and always working about what the best way is to reach our audiences. And so I have talked a lot previously about how we're trying to reach our stakeholders who do not have kids in the school. So we've started with what's new at DCS. While we were doing the levy, we were really trying to connect with residents who didn't have kids in the district. And so I'm going to do a 180 today, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our parents because although we have been emphasizing our audience and our stakeholders that don't have kids in the district, our parents are actually a very large in the primary segment and population that we listen to. And so in January, after Mr. Fallon did his research that he presented at the last board meeting, I worked with him to launch a communication survey to our parents. It was a written survey instrument, so it was just a link that we sent out to parents. So, and it was very short, had 10 questions on it in total. And we just asked them some really basic things. And part of the goal, and you might look at this and say, these are really basic questions, but because we haven't done a survey like this, we kind of had to start with the basic fundamental things so that we can kind of move forward from here and look at longitudinal data over time. So I was like, all right, I just got to get a base. I just got to understand where they're at right now. And so we started to ask some very basic questions. So what we learned through that survey is that a majority of our parents do feel like we are sending the right amount of information. So on the left-hand side, that pie chart, 79% feel like the amount of information and communication that they get from our district is the right amount. There is 8% that say it's a little bit too much. Surprisingly, dads seem to respond that they get too much information if you look at the gender breakdown. It's very interesting. Listen, this is just data. This is not me making assumptions. It's true data. And then 10% too little. And yes, 10% too little. And I thought that was interesting because I think sometimes we cater a little bit too much to that 10%. And so when I look at this, I feel very strongly that 8 out of 10 of our parents think we're doing everything the way we should be. And we're sending out the right amount of information and we're providing them the information that they need. And so that makes me feel good. It makes me feel like, all right, we're in a good place there. So then we kind of move on to the right. Generally speaking, how useful is the information and communication you guys get from the Dublin City School District? So 46% said it's very useful, and then 49% said somewhat useful. Only 3% said not useful. So most of what we're sending out, people are finding useful and appreciate having it and are reading it. We have seen an increase in our read time on our SMORE newsletters and the number of people who are viewing them. When I got here about a year ago, I really have tried, and it's a daily process, but I have tried to encourage our principals to put almost everything that they can in those Friday newsletters. And I promised them that over time they would see more readership of those newsletters. I said, trust the process, because what will happen is the first time someone misses something because they didn't read one, they will never not read one again. And so I said, it just takes a little bit of training of getting people, and they were very worried. No one's going to see it, and they're not going to know, and I have to, but we're there. We're getting there, and people are starting to read it, and we're seeing the data is showing that people are referencing those newsletters. So we went on to which social media platform do you use the most? And so this data, I was excited to see this return because this is what I anticipated, and it's part of why we've been making some of the changes we have. So over the course of the last year, I have been working with Kieran Grady as a social media manager to make all of our schools active on Facebook and Instagram. We're about halfway there with Facebook. We've got everybody on Instagram. We started with Instagram because it's a little bit easier of a platform to tackle in terms of learning how to use it than Facebook. Facebook's a beast when you talk about accounts. And so everybody is on Instagram. They're using it. They're loving it. Things are looking really good. And we've got about half our buildings onto Facebook. I'm still in the process. In order to set up a Facebook for everybody, I have to actually physically be with the social media manager in the building so that they can log themselves into the account. We are setting up all the accounts under one Meta Business Suite, which is a huge change for our district. Before, every account was kind of individual and owned by that person. We are setting them up like a business in a district should, where all of our pages and accounts are under the ownership of Dublin. So if a social media manager were to turn over tomorrow, per se, Keyburn and I have access to that on the back end. We can take that person off as an administrator and we can put a new person on. And so that will prevent us from having to create a new page every time we have a new person managing it or losing access to that page. It's also a little bit of an insurance policy for us because if something happens with one of those accounts, say it gets hacked, we have the ability as super admin on the account to go in and shut it down without having to contact the social media manager. So if we couldn't get a hold of them, we have full control of the accounts. So our parents, as I've shared, are their primary social media is Facebook. Secondary is Instagram. I do see that I can tell based on the survey data that our elementary parents are the ones you're seeing an uptick with the elementary parents on Instagram. So I anticipate that over the next 10 years, we may see this flip, where Facebook will kind of phase out and Instagram will actually be the top. But we just got to wait for those elementary kiddos to get in high school. And then what is the way in which you prefer to get most of the information from the Dublin City School District? By far, it was email and SMORE newsletters. So again, we're good. We're in good shape there. 16.7% preferred text message. That was our younger parents. When I look at them, there are parents whose their oldest child is in elementary school. I have not, kind of my process, and just so you guys understand where my head's at, I try to limit us for text message use to things that are critical information. So if it's not something that's timely or something that's urgent, I encourage our principals to use email. We do use text message for late buses because that's a timely thing. We want parents to know. And then we do use it in any type of crisis situation. I'd like to keep it that way. I feel like it delineates the two so that people understand, hey, if I'm getting a text, it's something important and I need to pay attention to it. I don't want them to start to ignore those text messages because it's the Friday newsletter or it's this or it's that. So although we have a segment of the audience that would prefer it via text, we're going to keep it that way for a little bit longer, and there's a reason for that. And then we have very little that look for their information on the mobile app, social media, or the website, which makes sense to me. People want their information to come to them. Keeps me in a role here. How often do you visit the Dublin City Schools website? So this is something that I kind of knew this data was going to come back like this because I look at website analytics on a regular basis. 48% of our parents visit our website occasionally, 12% frequently. We have lots of high school parents that use our website more than our elementaries. They need to get on there to see academic programs and pathways handbooks. They need to get on there to see graduation information. There's athletic information. So they're having to go there to check things. Not as much with our elementaries because teachers are still communicating regularly with the elementary student, with their parents. So what is a little bit, I guess, will be a challenge in an area where we can grow is that when you look at how useful is the Dublin City School District website on the right, 29% very useful and 60% somewhat useful. So we're going to keep this data in mind and kind of reflect on it as we head into the summer. We are updating our content management system for our website. I think I shared at the last meeting our website will change again. But as part of that process, we are going to try to really look at how user-friendly. And I think the information on our website is useful. I think it's an issue with our navigation and people being able to find it. And so we just got to make the information's there. I think we do a good job in making sure all the information is there. It's just figuring out how parents navigate that website, and I plan on utilizing the key communicators team to help me figure that out. So I'm going to actually use them as a pilot focus group with that new website and have them kind of tell me, okay, if you were going to go and look for this information, how would you go look for it? Where would you go on the website? Because I think sometimes we have a tendency internally to try to approach it the way we would internally and how we function as departments internally, and that's not how parents think about how to access information. All right, and so in conclusion, I did look at the cross-tabulated data for this survey. There wasn't anything that really stood out too much other than our elementary parents are on Instagram. Our middle school parents, were by far fans of Facebook. And then we did collect what county the respondents lived in, and so the only thing that stuck out to me in the differences in the counties, because I know it's been a focus of ours, is how closely do you follow news and information about the Dublin City School District. I thought it was fascinating that the average was 50% across all respondents, but Delaware County was 56% and Union County was 48%. So Delaware County follows us a little bit more closely. I'm going to dig into that a little bit because I'm starting to try to figure out where Delaware County gets their information about the school district. I haven't quite tapped into that, Shawnee Hills area and how to connect with them. But I do know that they follow us very closely, hence all the fun we had with Deer Run. And so I just thought it was interesting that one was more and Union County was less. And then Franklin was right at 50%. They're our average. So in summary, I'm working on getting all the schools active on Facebook and Instagram. We'll continue to help principals with best practices for some more newsletters and emails. We're going to improve the website this summer, and then we're trying to develop relationships with the municipalities in Delaware and Union County so that we can bring them in. One of the things that we've heard is that we include a lot of City of Dublin announcements in our newsletters, but we don't include anything about any other municipalities. And I think that's an accurate thing. We are only, as our team is only partnered with City of Dublin in terms of getting announcements out there. And so we've had some parents who have asked, can you work with Union County? Maybe there's some things that they offer that we're not aware of. And so that's something that my team's going to be working on as we approach the 24-25 school years, finding out who those people are. And the last thing I have to share is that Elementary 15, these are photos from Mr. Kaiser, Sean Kaiser's class at Grizel Middle School. We have 10 students working on researching in pairs the 5 names that we proposed to them for Elementary 15. They have been very excited working on this project, and we've been in contact a lot as we've tried to connect them with the right people and the right players to get the information they need. And so at the April 25th board meeting, we will have the groundbreaking ceremony for Elementary 15. Everybody should have received an invitation from Tanya Ewert. She is leading this project. We're just asking everybody to arrive at 5. We'll have the groundbreaking ceremony at 5:15, and we'll head back to Jerome at 6 for a board meeting, and that is when the students will present the research. It will be like a science fair gallery walk kind of concept, so you will have an opportunity to interview them, ask them questions. About a week prior to that event, a week to 2 weeks, I will try to send each of you a little bit of background about each of the names, so that if you want to read about each of the names and come prepared with questions or things you might be asking the students as part of their research, you will have the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Any questions for me or Mrs. Dietrich?
I had a question for you, Mrs. Dietrich. I didn't know sorry if this is premature, because I know you said you were using this for key communicators. So the mobile app, I'm assuming that costs us money to have one. Are we thinking we're going to phase that away?
It is such a good question, because I was just talking to Mrs. Ram about this today. So the mobile app comes as a package with part of our website. So it's currently, the way it's set up is it's something that we already have. It's just whether we make use of it or not. Admittedly, I do not know a whole lot about the current CMS mobile app, and I haven't dug in because I knew that we were going to be changing. So with the new content management system for the new website that we'll get this summer, we'll also get a new mobile app content management system as well. And so a goal of my team will be to try to really learn that a little bit better than we have with the current mobile app, so that we can work with it a little bit better. One of the things we are going to look at, though, is the user friendliness of it. And if it's not something where we really think we're going to get an ROI on it, because there's not a lot of people that use it, we may go back to Final Site and ask them if it's something that we can basically unembed out of our package, and if there's a chance to get money back for it. Because right now, we don't have a lot of people that are using it, and transparently, it's another thing for us to manage and try to remember to update and all that kind of stuff. So if it's not effective. So we're waiting to see when we change. We'll change to the new content management system July 4th. And so as part of our training, which will be approaching in May, June, we're waiting to pilot that mobile app to see if it's going to be something that is manageable for our team, and also if it's going to be user-friendly enough for our parents. And if it's not, then we're going to try to have some conversations with Final Site that I might ask Mr. Stark to join me on.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate that. Any questions? No? Okay, reports and action items from the Treasurer's Office.
There are several things on the agenda this evening. I did send out an update to you on most of these items. Just again, go over just real briefly on them. The approval of resolutions to file a complaint against valuation of real property. This is 2 more from your member from the February 26th meeting. Just a reminder, this is only against commercial properties. It would not be against any residential properties. C is our approval of resolution accepting the rates, is starting the tax collection process for next year as we move to 2025. This is a statutory requirement through the Franklin County Auditor that we have to approve by March 31st as well. The donation is 1 this evening. Is a $2,500 from the Romanelli Memorial Scholarship Fund to the Jerome High School Principals Fund. You remember about a month ago we had one to Grizel from the same donors, so just another building in that area. Student Activity Purpose Clause, we have the Scioto Art History Club. And talking about Meta, this is different Meta. This isn't the Facebook Meta, but this is Meta Solutions, which is our ITC site, and and they help support us in our fiscal software, our EMIS, what we do in EMIS, and also our IEP software, and Mr. Andres and Student Services, among other things, and they're also their purchasing consortium. I did mention they did raise rates this year. They hadn't raised rates in several years. They raised the per pupil rate about 20% this year, and they've already approved a 10% increase for next year for their core services. We are continuing to work with them on pricing, as we feel sometimes from the standpoint as a larger district, and the per pupil is not necessarily adequate in charging of funding of Meta, and lurking on a potential, maybe a cap situation, working with their board of directors and their leadership. Now, I will mind you, as I said in my update, they're mostly smaller districts who would have to pay considerably, probably a little more, to manage it with a cap. And so maybe falling on deaf ears, but we'll continue to look at that. We'll also look at different options in ITCs. We are kind of limited in that, but we'll look at all options from that. And then we do have approval of the agreements for IGS and for the electric and gas contracts. This will allow us, they will become our broker starting July 1 with electric, and then January 1 of 2025 for gas. So as we go forward with that, and us being our broker. We also have the February financial report. So any questions on that? As you can see, we're on with estimates at this point in the year. The big one will be this month in March. Hopefully, I don't know if they all will, but hopefully all 3 counties will settle for first half real estate taxes. Then we'll get an idea of exactly where we're at based on our estimates as we move into the May 5-year forecast update. And lastly, sorry about the late change here and adding this appropriation change, but with the announcement of the Ohio CTE grant, we wanted to make sure we get that on the agenda this evening, as I know Dr. Marshausen talked about that grant a little bit. So we want to be able to add that to there for the appropriation to be able to spend. We also got the Ohio Attorney General Safety and Security grant again, and then the other ones are federal grants where they've done the reallocation process, and so we just matching those, what the allocation would be from the state level for those federal grants. So any questions?
All right, if there are no questions, it is recommended by the treasurer that the Board of Education approve items 7C through 7I. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Valentine, a second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. De Silva. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Messick?
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby?
Yes.
And Mrs. Gillis?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Also, thank you so much for the email, the emails that you're sending. I do really appreciate you consolidating that into paragraphs. It's very nice. Thank you. All right, moving on. Reports from the Department of Academics and Student Learning.
Okay, we have brief updates this evening from Mrs. Marple and Mr. Andres. First, though, I want to tell you what you will vote on here in a few minutes. That is the Global Travel Handbook. This is the second reading. As a reminder, last year at about this time, I gave you an extensive update on global travel. As a reminder, global travel is not a district-sponsored initiative. It is a district-supported initiative, and that follows the legal advice given to us by our district legal team. We allow global travel leaders to reach out to our students, to use district resources to meet with them or communicate with them, but the trips are not sponsored by Dublin City Schools. So just an important distinction I want to say publicly. I'll turn it over to you, Mrs. Marple, for an update on PBIS.
Thank you. Good evening, Board. In the past, I've shared about our MTSS framework, and we've spent a lot of time talking about the academic side of that MTSS framework. Tonight, I would like to share a little bit about the behavior support side of MTSS, which we call PBIS, or Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. So this is one of those It's one part of the system that supports our students, and we know that they work together. And oftentimes, we spend so much time talking about the academic side of things, we forget that that behavior piece is such an important piece for our students and has lots of implications for our classrooms. So this PBIS portion is really about behavior and well-being. It's about approaching and teaching behavior and well-being needs like we address academic needs for our students. When we use a strong PBIS framework, it helps establish and maintain safe, positive, and equitable schools where students are safe, valued, connected, cared for. And it will lead to improved outcomes for students, both academically, but also reduced discipline. This is an example of a strong partnership between student services, teaching and learning, and our buildings. The magic actually happens out in our buildings with our building-based teams supporting our students on a regular basis. This work is led by Brittany Deschler, our MTSS coordinator, in partnership with Tyler Wolf and Sean Heimlich in student services. And much like the RTI side of student work, in MTSS, we have tiered framework in this space as well, where when we talk about Tier 1 of PBIS, we're really talking about universal instruction. In the classroom, that is having common behavior and teaching expectations for students. But on a larger scale, you can think of things like R Factor and the work we're doing with our community and our school communities with R Factor as a piece of that. And this really includes all students and staff. All students and staff. And when you go in our buildings, you'll see evidence of their PBIS framework because our buildings take ownership of thinking about what supports they're building within. And often they're themed and they're supported, and our teachers are on board and they're using a common language and support with our students. And then as you go through the tiers, you get more specific with students, smaller group work, or even individual work with students, and lean on the services that Dublin City Schools provides. So as a part of our building's MTSS team, every building actually has a PBIS team leading this work. And one of the things that we have been doing in recent weeks is Brittany Deschler and a couple of our other administrators have been visiting the buildings to check in on some of the work they've been doing with something we call a tiered fidelity inventory, which is really a self-assessment that helps each building report out on the work they're doing around PBIS. And this inventory really helps them with structure, consistency, fidelity to ensure that they're really owning that at the building level based on the unique needs of the students that are walking into their building. So if you recall, 2.5 years ago, Brittany came into this coordinator role focused on this MTSS piece in Dublin City Schools. And we're grateful for that because it's allowed us to pay attention to all pieces and think about the individual needs in our students. This is part of Ohio law. It's something that our buildings report on. And we have really worked on consistency across all of our buildings, and I just want to share a little bit about that tonight. So thank you. Mr. Andres?
Thanks, Lori. So in the early 2000s, we had 2 specialized learning centers, or SLCs, and those are, again, the programs for kids with the most intensive disabilities. And students who needed the support from our SLCs, they would be in high school for 8 years. So after their first 4 years, they would defer their diploma, as outlined in, we have a policy 5460.01 that allows for that. And then they'd return for their next 4 years in the high school, and they'd officially accept their diploma after 8 years or when they turned 22 years old. We knew that we could do better a long time ago. And so a bunch of wonderful people came together, and they came up with a great idea to create a transition program. And that transition program, the philosophy was 4 years in your high school, and then we'll make a transition, like kids do from 8th to 9th grade, to this new program that we would call Power Plus. And that program, for the longest time, was housed at the Bridge Street building that is now the road between Indian Run and Jay Liu. So kids ages 18 to 22, they came together for those intensive services from our different high schools. Now we have 9 SLCs and almost 40 students at Emerald Campus in what we lovingly refer to as PATHs. So PATHs stands for Post-Secondary Access to Transition After High School. We have 3 great teachers, Josh Graham, Becky Hasselberger, and Katie Socher, and they're led by Jenna Pruden and Sean Heimlich with their work. PATHs provides really targeted transition experiences and curriculum that help our students in their future education, their future employment, and their future independent living goals. And every kid is different, so we tailor our programs to meet their needs. So for example, we have some students who work mostly here in the building. An example is HydroSense. So if you're up on the 4th floor, you go to the restroom, you'll see soap in there. But more importantly, that is also the soap in the Andres family bathrooms. Some students here, they also go out into the community and work with community partners like Dewey's Pizza or the Ohio Wildlife Center. And then other kids go down to Ohio State. We have a partnership with them where they're able to interact and work with other college-aged students. Our PATHs kids present at conferences all the time, like the Ohio Dean's Compact or OCALI. I think this program started right about 2008, and at that point, everybody said it was very innovative. Since then, countless school districts inside of Ohio and outside of Ohio have come here, have visited our programs, and then they go back to their district and they try to steal it and replicate it, which we're so happy about. Just this year, we've had 5 different districts come out, and we have a few more this spring. So after 16 years of an innovative program, it continues to, I think, meet that bar of innovation. And it's exciting to know that the thing that we created here in Dublin has been able to have an impact on kids with disabilities, not just here, but all across the state and the country. So one thing that we do really well here is special education and specifically transition services in preparing kids for life after high school. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, approval of, okay. It's recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the revised global travel handbook. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mrs. Messick and Mr. Valentine, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Messick?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby?
Yes.
And Mrs. Gillis?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. And just so you know, just making sure you guys are all awake over here, we're going to go back to section 7 so we can actually vote on 7.B.
I apologize. This needed to be voted on separate as a resolution per statute. So I apologize for not bringing that up earlier.
It is recommended by the treasurer that the Board of Education approved the attached resolutions to file complaint against the valuation of real property tax year for 2023. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Rigby. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. De Silva. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Rigby?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Messick?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
And Mrs. Gillis?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. All right. We can move on. Chief Operating Department of Operations.
Good evening. No worry about falling asleep because now the excitement is here. The first item I'd like to talk about is one of our bond projects, which is replacing the fire alarms at Jerome, Kaufman, Scioto, Sells, and Davis. And tonight we're recommending Advanced Engineering Consultants to provide the design for this work for a contract not to exceed $529,000. The next item for approval tonight is another bond project, is to replace our tracks at Jerome, Sells, Davis, Griselle, and Carr. And we are recommending a new firm to the school district called O Sports, highly recommended, to help with the design for a contract not to exceed $235,000. The next item is earlier this year, Dr. Schwanke, Dr. Marshausen, and myself met with all the principals about projects that they wanted to do and things like that. And 3 projects really had some good conversation, but we needed an architect to really look at it. And one was at Scioto High School, converting some existing space to offices for counselors. One was at Kaufman High School to convert some existing space to a functioning receiving area. They have a receiving area now, but it's shared space and it's not very functional. And one is right here at Emerald Campus, which is looking at partitioning the space that we're in from the lobby. So we are recommending Ford & Associates, who's well familiar with all three of these buildings, for a contract not to exceed $158,000 to look into all these projects and to make up some designs and budgets so we can decide what to do moving forward. The next item is something that, and I put this on my board report, which was in front of you in October. It's for a SAUDA structural review. But when you approve these resolutions, it approves us to go to contract. And unfortunately, and it was the first time it's happened to me that we went to contract with the firm, they looked more at the scope and decided they weren't the firm. So we had to re-RFQ, and here we are again. But this time we're recommending CTL Engineering. CTL has a very good history with the district. They actually was the engineering firm who put together the entire building envelope project across the street for Kaufman. And what they're going to do is provide a real good structural assessment of SAUDA. Why we're doing this, SAUDA has a history of settling, the building settling that was repaired a few years ago. But if you remember last year when the sanitary pipe broke, it gave us some pause that we wanted to look at that again, and that's what they'll be doing. So we're hiring them for a not-to-exceed contract of about $54,000 to help us with that. And lastly, this goes back to a couple board meetings ago when the board approved a resolution of urgent necessity to allow us to replace the roof at Dare Run. So instead of public bidding this, we are putting out a request for proposal. And we wanted to bring that request for proposal to the board so you could approve that and we can order the parts right away. But the request for proposal is coming back on March 20th, and we're going to want to approve that so we can order everything because this is a fast-running project. So what we have presented from you tonight is Mays Engineering, who's designing the roof, came up with a budget for this project. And much like when you publicly bid something, even though this is an RFP, it's still consistent. When you publicly bid something, you have to publish a budget. And when you publicly bid it, people have to come in within 20% of that budget. So we feel this is a fair budget at $1,650,000. We feel it should come in below that, or at least close to that. And then if it comes in below that, this resolution would give us the authority to approve that bid so we can put out a purchase order and move forward. But we would still come back to the board on April 11th and say this is who we awarded it to so the board can still approve that contract. In the event it supersedes this amount, we will wait for the board's approval on April 11th. And that is all I have, if there's any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stark. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve items 11A through 11E. I have checked all my letters. We are hitting them all. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Berkey. Do we second?
Second.
Second, Mrs. Silva. Call the roll, please.
Is that Mrs. DeSilva or Mrs. Messick? Oh,
I got
Mrs.
At the same time, it doesn't matter.
I gave it to DeSilva. That's what I
Gotcha,
heard.
gotcha. Mrs. Rigby?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSilva?
Yes.
Mrs. Messick?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
And Mrs. Gillis?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Reports from Human Resources.
Good evening, members of the board. I'll start tonight on our certified agenda side. You'll start and you'll see the administrative job description is the first item up for you. This is not a new FTE. This is a reclassification of an employee to better align their current jobs and responsibilities. You'll then see 4 administrator salary changes, and then item number 7 is a technical position, so that's not actually an administrator. It's on this portion of the agenda. They're part of our responsible staffing plan. They also reflect the work these individuals are currently performing in their day-to-day jobs. The next items are contract renewals, and it's followed by a new contract and then resignation of a position that, again, is one of our technical positions. The job description, new admin contract, and resignation of the technical position are bundled together for simplicity. You'll see a retirement. There's 2 retirements. The first one is Kathy Tila. Kathy's an occupational therapist. She'll have 34 years in our district, along with Dave Scott, who's a science teacher at Kaufman High School, who's also going to retire with 34 years in our district. A few other items on this section include the hiring of 2 occupational therapists and then a resolution to non-renew 2 teachers who are on a 1-year replacement contract only, and that's standard that we do that every year at this time. The supplementals that are on tonight's agenda are for spring athletics only, and there are just a few items that are either resignations or salary corrections in our supplementals as well. The final item in this portion of the agenda is a list of administrators who are up for contract renewal, and they're either going to receive a 2 or 3-year contract, and this duration is based on their time in the district as well as the position they currently hold. And moving on to our classified agenda, you'll see 6 resignations. There's 4 retirements, and then briefly on the retirements, Lucia Cox will retire as a clinic aide from Old Sawmill, 28 years in our district. Karen Ecker will retire as a bus driver with 10 years. Jan Geis retiring as a secretary from Davis Middle School with 22 years in our district. And then Kim Evans is a retirement correction from our last board agenda. So we had to change that date, so that's why it's on tonight as well. There are 6 new hires and then an unpaid leave of absence. And then the resolution that appears on the agenda is for a termination of a bus driver in our district, along with the approval of a job description. The final item in the HR section tonight are stipends, and there's only a single one, and it's for trip leaders as part of the global travel program for 2024.
Brian, can I add something to that? The stipend is actually paid for by the travel companies. They pay us, and they want to give the travel leaders a little bit of money for tips or for unexpected expenses. So that isn't district money. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. That concludes the HR portion of tonight's agenda.
Thank you. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve items 13A through 13C. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Messick. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Valentine. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Messick?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby?
Yes.
And Mrs. Gillis?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Reports from communications. I didn't know if you had, and we're good. We're good on that. All right, moving on. Okay. And we have executive session tonight. So in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 121.22, we are moving into executive session to consider the purchase of property for public purposes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. De Silva, second. Second by Mrs. Rigby. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby?
Yes.
Mrs. Messick?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
And Mrs. Gillis?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0.
Without objection, I would like Dr. Schwanke and Mr. Stark to come into executive session with us, and there will be no action taken at the conclusion of the executive session.